Greetings and salutations to all of my fellow rock and roll rebels out there. It is Friday night, and you know what that means. It is time for episode 157 of The Fortress of Rock, dropping here on August the 16th, 2024. I am your humble and gracious host, the Maestro Kevin Crane, and as always, ecstatic, giddy, to have you aboard for this weekly rock and roll extravaganza. Now we have to dampen the enthusiasm a little bit because as we go into news of the world, of course, our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and Queen. We have to start things off with, for my generation, the loss here in the last 48 hours of two very significant rock and roll figures. Most of you probably know by now who they are. But first up, Greg Kihn passed away. Greg Kihn, maybe some of you go, who, huh? Oh, Jeopardy, yeah, I know that song. Maybe a few more of you will go, oh yeah, and I remember the breakup song, which was tremendous, an absolutely fantastic song. But he had a lot of other good songs. Happy Man, great, great song. I highly recommend you get out onto Spotify or iTunes, whatever your preferred music listening platform is, even if you just want to listen to his greatest hits, you won't be disappointed. He had some really, really great music. Only known for a couple hit songs, but he was so much more than that. In addition to being a very, very important rock and roll figure in the early 80s, he eventually reinvented himself and became an author, specializing in thrillers and horror novels. So, gotta respect a man who's that creative. For me personally, this hits hard. He was one of those underrated influences on my early musical tastes. So, very, very saddened to hear of the passing of Greg Kihn. And then I would say in a broader spectrum, more mass appeal, much more profound death, Jack Russell, the voice of Great White. And yes, I know here over the last decade plus there have been two Great Whites. There was a legal battle, as it seems like there always is, about who's got the rights to the name. So Jack Russell toured as Jack Russell's Great White. I actually never saw the original incarnation, but I did get to see both the new Great White and then Jack Russell's version. And of course I preferred to hear the original voice, the original singer of Great White. And of course he led, I mean, it's hard to put in perspective because when you're talking about celebrities, when you're talking about rock and roll stars, actors, actresses who have had some level of success and still to this day their movies are popular, or in this case the music and the albums still have some semblance of popularity, you know they're doing okay. They should be able to pay the bills if they haven't mismanaged things or they haven't fallen into drug abuse. But of course we all know Jack Russell had a rough go of it because of that tragic nightclub fire. Killed approximately 100 people, and the band and Jack Russell were never the same again. And looking at a lot of the people, his peers from the 80s, Guys like Jack Blades, Brad Gillis from Night Ranger, and Bret Michaels, and then Dee Snider was the one, as he always has the guts to say what others won't. He said the man was not evil, referring to Jack Russell. Basically, he's getting blamed for something that was beyond his control, and again, in that nightclub fire situation. And it's true. It's absolutely true. It was one of the earliest examples I could remember of the media going after a band, a performer from the rock and roll community. We'd seen government do it with the PMRC, but with the tragedy that happened at this nightclub, the media, as they are always wont to do, very, very quick to blame Jack Russell and blame Great White for the tragedy. Not doing enough research, not delving in as they should to this day on many, many issues. And you wonder how many years, what kind of a toll it took on Jack Russell and his life. So, unfortunately, here on the Fortress of Rock, we start off with our thoughts, our prayers, our condolences to me, personally, two legends in the world of rock and roll, Greg Kihn and Jack Russell. They will be missed. Then I will say this. Everything else for the rest of this segment pales in comparison. Most of the news tidbits I've got involve people I really don't care about, bands and performers I really don't care about compared to Greg Kihn and Great White, so take that for what you will. I will inject as much enthusiasm as I can. Once we get the breakdown, however, I will not have to fake my enthusiasm. As last night, Thursday, August the 15th, I got to see Living Colour finally. After all these decades of worshiping Corey Glover and Vernon Reid and the boys, finally got to see them perform a headlining show. I had seen them as opening act 3 times here over the last, let's say 7-8 years. They opened for Everclear. They opened for Aerosmith. Here I got to see them as the headliner. So I will not have to fake my enjoyment on that one. But for now, let's finish up with news of the world. Now, I will say this. We'll start off, I do love Huey Lewis. So he is going to be a rare exception here in news of the world. Love, love, love Huey Lewis. Huey Lewis should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame along with his band, The News. I am steadfastly devoted to pushing that agenda. Huey Lewis in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, of course, if you followed his career over the last 10 or 15 years, you know that he has had gradual issues with his hearing to the point where his last album, Weather, came out a while ago, years ago, and that was pretty much his swan song. He cannot perform live anymore, but I give the man credit again, just like I was talking about how Greg Kihn reinvented himself, going from rock and roll performer to author. Huey Lewis is going to star in a mockumentary a la Curb Your Enthusiasm that's in development at Fox right now called Whatever Happened to Huey Lewis. It will, of course, have the obligatory big-name guest stars popping in. This sounds like it has potential. I am very cynical about network TV right now. I prefer the quality of the shows that you can find on streaming much more than what you find on network TV. Things have drastically changed in that respect, of course, over the last 15 to 20 years. But this, if it makes it to air, and I'm crossing my fingers hoping for it, I cannot wait to watch whatever happened to Huey Lewis. Now, we've been talking a lot about music biopics lately. And this is one that I really don't care about. I mean, last week it was Britney Spears, and I really didn't care about that. But I'm just doing my due diligence, reporting this stuff to you guys. It's in the realm of music. 80s icon here, 80s pop icon, Boy George. There is a biopic in development featuring Boy George at TriStar, and it will be based loosely on his 3 autobiographies, focusing, for the most part, on his time as an international superstar with Culture Club. So, I'm not going to write it off completely. Maybe it could be interesting. If it's about 80s music, you know I'm going to have a little bit of interest. But I was never a big Culture Club guy. So, we'll see. This is a we'll wait and see moment here on the Fortress of Rock. Another we'll wait and see moment. Now, I'm a big Springsteen fan. I am torn about The Boss, as you know. If you've been listening to the podcast over the last few years, I don't like him as a human being at all, but musically, he's a legend. I don't think everything he's done is perfect, like people at Rolling Stone magazine would tell you. And this is going to be rock and roll blasphemy, kids, so get ready for it. One of his most overrated, overblown albums, even though it is a bare, stripped down affair, is Nebraska. And it is so cherished and so worshipped that PBS, now PBS of course airs things differently depending on what part of the country you're in, what choices your local PBS affiliate makes in terms of what they want to air, when they want to air it. So it's not like network TV or streaming. But there is a tribute show revolving around Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska that will start airing on PBS stations in the U.S. on August the 31st. And just like the Boy George biopic, this is a we'll wait and see type of thing. I'm not going to get burned by PBS again after that whole disco soundtrack of a revolution debacle. So this time I might dive in, see if it looks like it's going to be any good, but I will not commit to the whole thing if it looks like it's a train wreck like that disco show was. So just be forewarned. I am not guaranteeing a full review of this whenever it hits. I would imagine for me, Upper Midwest, probably going to hit some point in early September. Okay, if you like John Lennon and Yoko Ono, here you go. I warned you guys, a lot of this stuff was going to be even more downbeat than having to pass along the news about Greg Kihn and Jack Russell. A really odd, I will say this again, third straight story, borderline interesting, we'll wait and see. In very few select theaters on October the 9th, I believe around 50 theaters, if you're a fan of John Lennon and Yoko Ono, Daytime Revolution, a documentary coming out, which chronicles the week back in 1972 when John and Yoko took over the Mike Douglas show for a week. This could be maybe the only idea, the only documentary involving John Lennon that I could take an interest in. I might again have to check this out, not in theaters. I won't pay money for it that way. But if it hits streaming, once it hits streaming, maybe. Again, we'll wait and see. This is the one concept, the one idea involving John Lennon and Yoko Ono that I could really be down with. And then finally, before we move on to a little bit of live music news. Now, I know Trent Reznor is talented. It's just he's not my cup of tea. He never has been. I know he scored the soundtrack for The Social Network, highly regarded movie starring Jesse Eisenberg, all about the birth of Facebook. Well, now Nine Inch Nails, his band, will score the upcoming third movie in the Tron series for Disney, Tron Ares. So Trent Reznor, again, another guy, you see a pattern, see a theme here. Another guy expanding his horizons, trying to do more than just being pigeonholed as industrial rock. So kudos to him for that. Now, I don't know how far out we are from actually seeing and hearing Tron Ares, but Disney recently had a convention, as everybody does. The comic book world has one. Every major studio has one, and Disney, of course, recently had one to announce this along with other news involving Tron Ares. All right, our little brief bit of live music news before we move on to Living Color. We mentioned this story months ago, and it has now come to fruition. The Sex Pistols, this past week, specifically August the 13th, was the first show, I believe, in a pair of benefit shows at Bush Hall in London. The Sex Pistols performed live for the first time since 2008. But for the first time ever, they performed without Johnny Rotten, aka John Lydon. We mentioned the tribute show for Robbie Robertson a few weeks ago that is coming up in Los Angeles. That, of course, is October the 17th at the Kia Forum. Subtitled Life is a Carnival. Well, they're taking it out on the road. And I guess my understanding is this is another band, the band, that I've never really followed or had a lot of interest in. But the Life is a Carnival tour, subtitled, I believe, tying into The Last Waltz. Of course, the movie that they are, to me, most famous for. Now, not everybody who's appearing at the show in Los Angeles will be going out on the road for the Life is a Carnival tour. Again, a tribute to the life of Robbie Robertson. But the former Heartbreakers, Mike Campbell and Benmont Tench, will be along for the ride for the full tour, as will, it looks like, Jamie Johnson. I know he is extremely popular. My friends tell me, though, who had to sit through him as an opening act for Lynyrd Skynyrd, that he is awful. Awful. I'll just put it that way. They said he was awful, one of the worst performers they have ever seen, and I know they have seen almost as many concerts as I have. So I take their word for it. So the Life is a Carnival tour, October and November. I believe it starts up right after that show at the Kia Forum. 18 North American dates. Then finally, Jack White. I've hinted at my love for his brand new album, No Name. Full review, still coming up in a couple weeks. Got to get through these concerts here, and then we will give you a full review of Jack White's brand new album, No Name. Brilliant, brilliant album. I cannot overstate it, how great No Name is. It sounds like a lost White Stripes album when the White Stripes were peaking, circa Elephant. So check out No Name. But if you want to check out Jack White on tour, good luck. I'm not saying he's not touring. I'm not saying he's not doing shows. But he is confessed. He is admitting that technically he is, quote, on tour right now, unquote. But he won't announce dates in advance. I don't know how that works. I really don't. How can you set up a concert? You have to have contracts in place. You have to be able to get a crew ready to set you up for a show. Now, if you have it all spaced out and planned out ahead of time, and you know you're going from Chicago to Milwaukee, or from Los Angeles to San Francisco, you can plan things out logistically, talk ahead of time to the venue managers. But what are you doing here? If you just sporadically decide, hey, tonight I'd like to play in Daytona Beach, or I'd like to play in Austin, Texas. Now, I'm sure the venues would be ecstatic to have Jack White, especially smaller venues where they could pack it full of fans. But how do the fans find out? How do you clear all the paperwork and the waivers and all that good stuff? I'm skeptical that Jack is really going to do a lot of shows. Let's put it that way. But we'll see. We'll see. This is what we get. He is a mad genius, I guess I would call him. Mad genius of rock and roll. But after listening to No Name, he can do whatever he wants. Because that right now is a very, very strong contender for the Fortress of Rock album of the year. I will tell you that. Spoil the review a little bit coming up in just a few weeks, where we'll go track by track through all 13 songs on No Name. But again, for now, if you want to see Jack White live, good luck. Maybe, possibly, if you live in a bigger city, I'm sure he'll play Detroit. I think he has a fondness for Nashville, so you might be able to pick up on a thread on Facebook or word of mouth. I'm sure he'll play those cities. Otherwise, who knows? So again, good luck tracking down Jack White live. So now, staying with the theme of live music, we segue into Breakdown. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite bands of all time, Living Colour, live. Finally, I got to see them as a headliner. All right, so now we move on to Breakdown, where we look at the best in new music, albums, songs, and of course, concert reviews. And this is another big one, following on the heels of one of the best shows I've seen in a long, long time with Collective Soul. We get another awesome rock and roll extravaganza. I was worried about this one. I don't mind saying, after seeing hundreds and hundreds of concerts, I have kind of developed a sixth sense about some of these shows. And I was a little worried about this one. I did not know, given that it was a smaller crowd, how well Living Colour would adapt, how well they would adjust. Would they give a full show? Would they bail out early? Maybe play an hour and 10, an hour and 15 minutes? Because there were not that many people there. I would say maybe, if we were lucky, 2,000. And I would say that was probably pushing it. Probably closer to 1,500, more conservative estimate. And no merch sales. That was an interesting thing that I noticed. First time I've ever seen a show where there was absolutely no merchandise sales for the headlining act. But this was, of course, at the Sweetwater Performance Pavilion in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's just on the western outskirts of Fort Wayne, a very easy drive for us coming from the Fortress of Rock studios. But it's bare bones, let's put it that way. It's an outdoor facility, but there is a cover over it. But there are no permanent facilities. They have to they basically bring in food trucks for any kind of sustenance you might need. They bring in trailers with bathrooms. And we will be there again next month, by the way, for Rival Sons and Clutch. But it's very conveniently located, and it's bare bones, but it's fine. It's nice, easy in, easy out. So the opening act was the Y Store. They got to play for, I would say, close to 45 minutes. 40, 45. They were fine. I wasn't overly impressed. They were a little bit better to me, at least, than Anything But Human, the opening act last week. I gave you kids my review of that whole Collective Soul show. If you didn't hear it, jump back in our archives a week. The Y Store was a little bit better. Guitarist, very good, very solid. Basically, the three musicians, guitar, bass, drummer, I was very impressed with. Their music is kind of maybe trying to be a little bit like the Allman Brothers. My friends said a little bit of Dave Matthews Band in there. I was personally disappointed in the lead singer. I didn't think he had a lot of, for the second week in a row, another frontman who didn't have a lot of charisma, didn't have a great voice. I kind of sit there and I go, what are the other three guys in the band thinking? Thinking they've hitched their wagons to this dull, semi-talented frontman. And I know that sounds harsh and cruel, and I'm sorry, because they've all got more talent in their pinky fingers than I will have for music in terms of playing it, performing it, than I have in my entire body. But I think the weak part of the Y Store was the lead singer. And again, I was consulting with my friends during the show, as they always make some very astute and interesting observations. My one friend said it looks like Patrick Swayze from Next of Kin. Then I heard a combination of Ace Frehley and Neil Young. But he was a little bit awkward on the acoustic guitar and a little bit subpar in terms of his voice. And he couldn't really understand the lyrics very well. Now, they at least were selling their CDs after the show, signing them, which is always a cool move by an opening act. Always very smart, very cool move. And like I said, I liked them better than last week's opener, Anything But Human. Still not great, though. Still not that magic opening act you hope for. Like a Rival Sons, for me personally, Rival Sons, Collective Soul, the Black Moods. Again, I was very skeptical, given the smaller crowd, what Living Colour would do when they came out. They came out just after 8:10 in the evening, and They played till 10 minutes till 10, so we got almost an hour and 40 minutes. This is the first time I have ever seen Living Colour as a headliner. And I mentioned I have seen them as an opening act here many times in the last 6-7 years, but I have never seen them as a headliner. So I was really looking forward to this because they are one of my favorite bands of all time. Corey Glover, one of the top 5 rock singers ever. And they did not disappoint. Not one bit. I have told the story decades ago, probably going on close to 20 years, maybe just short of 20, when my friend and I went to see Cheap Trick, and that's always our reference point for what could potentially be a bad concert when a band sees that they are not selling out like they used to in their glory days. When they're not as popular as they used to be, how are they going to handle it? And unfortunately, the one time I have seen Cheap Trick as a headliner, they bailed. They played for an hour and 15 minutes, and they bailed. They didn't put together a really good set list. I have Cheap Trick friends who chastise me anytime I bring that up and say, how can you say that? How dare you say that? Cheap Trick never puts on a bad show. Yes, they do. Everybody does. I might be fortunate enough, for the most part, to have seen the best of most of these bands, and I do believe they go out there trying to put their best foot forward each and every night, as Living Colour did last night, August the 15th. But I had that Cheap Trick vibe. My friend did as well. I was with him here at Living Colour, and he was with me at Cheap Trick. Star Plaza, Maryville, Indiana, no longer exists. Maryville does, but not the Star Plaza. One of the worst concerts I've ever seen. But anytime again I see a facility has not sold a ton of tickets for a show, I wonder how the performer is going to behave, how they're going to respond. And once again, Living Colour came through, no, I'm not going to say with flying colors, but they came through as I would expect from one of my favorite bands ever. They made me proud. Let's put it that way. They made me proud that I am a massive Living Colour fan. Technically, I would say 17 songs. As we go through the set list here, song by song, I'll explain why technically 17. Couple things here. My favorite website for this stuff is setlist.fm, a wiki that I have used for years and years to get my set list from. So Living Colour starts off with Leave It Alone. And then they jump into Middleman. And then they play Bye, Ignorance is Bliss, and then Auslander, which was a nice little addition. A little bit of a deeper cut for Living Colour. And as I mentioned, seeing them as an opening act 3 times here over the last 7 years or so, that's one of those songs they slipped in here that they probably never, ever get to play live when they're only out there for 30 or 40 minutes. Then they move on to Never Satisfied. And then Funny Vibe, which I absolutely love off the first album. Vivid is such a ridiculously good album, a classic album in every respect. How it musically rocks. It has the hit songs. It has, of course, Cult of Personality, but it tackles serious issues in society. And Funny Vibe is one of those songs where you can enjoy it just for the music and what it is, but if you listen to the lyrics, you understand that the overtones of racism are there. Why are you going to give me that funny vibe? It's not real hard to figure out. The lyrics aren't subtle, but I think a lot of people like it more for the music than they do for the lyrics. I love the whole thing. I do not shy away, by the way, from political songs. I've told you guys this. I do not shy away from political songs. It's just they better be good, number one. And number two, don't give me the 5-minute diatribe before you launch into the political song. That's why Living Color is so awesome. They play the song, you listen to it, you enjoy it for what it is, you take away from it what you want. And they don't sit there and give you the extra commentary about what the song is actually about. And then that launched into another song from Vivid with a very, very serious theme to it. And it is arguably one of their top 3 or 4 songs ever. And that is Open Letter to a Landlord. That's basically about slumlords and how they treat people like garbage, and they don't understand what people have vested in their homes, as simple, as run down as they might be. Then another deep track like Auslander, Holy Roller. Great, great deep track from Living Color. And then we got the drum solo. So that's where I was saying, okay, we can't count that as a song per se, but a great drum solo from Will Calhoun. Then we'll talk more about the connection between MC5 and Living Color a little bit later, but Living Color always slips in a couple cover songs during the course of their sets. Some you know are coming, some are curveballs like this one. The most well-known song from the MC5 is Kick Out the Jams. Living Color absolutely destroyed it. Absolutely killed Kick Out the Jams. Then they did their tribute to Grandmaster Flash. Now, they did that also last year when I saw them open for Extreme. I think earlier I mentioned I'd seen them open in the past for Aerosmith and Everclear. Extreme, of course, last year. In the archives, you can look it up, another opening act performance from Living Color. But last year they did do this, where they did this whole medley of this 70s and 80s funk that is just fantastic. White Lines Don't Do It, Apache and The Message. And then it was all pretty much massive hits from there on out. Love Rears Its Ugly Head. The Glamour Boys. Elvis is Dead. Of course, with a little bit of Hound Dog in there. So that's, again, another reason I just love Living Color, is that they will put out a song like Elvis is Dead, which makes it sound like they're bitter and mean about, you know, the stories, you know, everything that people talk about, rock critics talk about. Elvis Presley stole everything that he had, his act, his moves, his songs from older black performers. So you would think that Living Color is really being nasty and mean with the song Elvis is Dead. But again, listen to the lyrics, number one. It's more about delusional fans thinking that Elvis Presley is still alive, hiding in plain sight somewhere. And then number two, they slip in a very awesome snippet from Hound Dog to kind of say, hey, we love Elvis. We love him. This song is not some kind of nasty vitriol hatred for the king. And then, immediately segueing from the end of Elvis is Dead to one of my favorite Living Color songs, I think one of the most underrated in the catalog, Type. And then we get the big gun, the roundhouse right, the punch to the face, Cult of Personality, where Corey Glover comes off the stage singing, and he is walking around through the crowd, taking selfies, giving high fives. A fantastic couple of moments there. And then before he gets back on stage, he segues into the other cover. This one we knew was coming, because it is probably their most famous cover song, Should I Stay or Should I Go? Of course, The Clash. And then this is another one where I say it's not really a full-fledged song, but they do their what they would call their quote-unquote theme song, not all the way through, not in its full form from Vivid, but of course they close the night out with What's Your Favorite Color, Baby? Just an unbelievable show, and I just feel, I'm not a religious person, but I feel blessed over the last 2 weeks seeing two of my favorite bands of all time, between Collective Soul and Living Color, just give me the greatest performances I could ever expect or hope from them, outside of expecting them to play for 2.5, 3 hours, which is not realistic. But if you find a chance, you find the time, you have access to see Living Color as a headliner, see them any way, shape, or form you can, even as an opening act, you must do it. And I know people, friends of mine, who kind of dismiss Living Color, and I hate to hear it. Oh, I never really got into Living Color. Why not? Why not? They are better than 99% of the bands from the 80s and 90s. Doesn't matter if you were into grunge or hair metal. They satisfied it all and did better than almost everybody out there. And yes, this is another one of those bands where I will say, when do they get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? For their influence, for breaking ground as an all-black heavy metal band, hard rock band, for their influence and for breaking barriers alone, they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Because God forbid, they play rock and roll. Wow. Shocking. And again, the greatest thing about Living Color is they could be jerks. They could be absolute jerks about the whole thing and act like they should be entitled. And they set the standard. They lead by example. They show us how to act and how to behave when it comes to race relations. They don't expect special consideration. They don't talk down to their audience, because I guarantee 90% of the audience last night was white. And you tell me how racism is rampant in America. I don't believe it. This is the kind of show, this is the kind of situation, this is the kind of band that shows me that there is hope. Predominantly white crowd listening to four awesome African-American rock and roll performers. Listening to lyrics about racism, poverty, segregation. And there was still the connection between the audience and the band. There was no animosity. There was no tension. There was no hatred. We could all learn a thing or two from a night like that, and we could all learn a thing or two from a band as fantastic as Living Color. All right, I got one new song for you before we move on and we start heading to the garage and climbing in to the rock and roll DeLorean. The new song from Tremonti, of course, Mark Tremonti, guitarist, sometimes vocalist for Alter Bridge, guitarist for Creed, and he likes to do the occasional crooning, has holiday albums out there, loves to sing Frank Sinatra standards. But Tremonti, his side band, new album coming out in January of 2025. First single is Just Too Much. So we've got competing, warring releases between the two primary members of Alter Bridge. Myles Kennedy, of course, The Art of Letting Go is out in October. So there's a little bit of time there, a little bit of a gap there. Let Myles Kennedy have his success through 2024, and then Tremonti can take over in 2025. Just Too Much is good. It's solid. I recommend it. Mark Tremonti has a very unique voice, very deep voice. And as I mentioned, he was born vocally to be a lounge lizard. The fact that he has an album of Sinatra covers should tell you all you need to know. And of course, projecting that voice into a very, very hard rock atmosphere has to be tricky for him. But Tremonti has been around for quite a while now, just like Alter Bridge. He does occasionally chime in vocals on a song or two for Alter Bridge. Of course, Myles Kennedy is the de facto frontman for Alter Bridge. But Mark Tremonti can stand on his own as guitarist and vocalist. I would just say that Just Too Much isn't their strongest moment. Tremonti has done much better in the past. It's better than most of the stuff out there. It's just not up to the high standards that I hold for anything coming from any of these guys from Alter Bridge. So again, I'll take it. I'm a little bit concerned that it's the first single, because usually, you know, the first single is supposed to be the strongest song on the entire album. Maybe this was a misstep in terms of what management decided to release. We'll see. I'm sure with as much time as we've got between now and the release of the album, we're going to get at least 2 more songs out there to listen to and judge. And if those come back in much stronger, then it's all good. But look at this again, positivity after a terribly depressing news of the world with the passing of Greg Kihn and Jack Russell. I give you a review of one of the greatest shows I've ever seen in living color, and a very, very solid start from Tremonti for their upcoming album. But Doc Brown is beckoning to me. He is calling me to the garage here at the Fortress of Rock. And we are in for a long, long journey. August the 16th arguably could be one of the most important days in rock history. So you're going to have to stick around for I Want to Go Back. And you will find out why I am putting that out there. You'll have to listen to the birthdays, and especially the anniversaries for August the 16th, and you can make the determination, am I full of it, or maybe the Maestro is right. All right, so now we delve into the rock and roll time stream, as we always do here in segment 3 of the Fortress of Rock. I Want to Go Back. Our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. Once again, I know I've mentioned it here earlier in this podcast. I am doing my absolute best to figure out what the audio issues are here for the Fortress of Rock. So that's why some of these segments might sound a little different than others. I am trying to figure out the best microphone, the best audio on playback, all of that good stuff. So I will apologize again, first and foremost, for that. Doc Brown looking at me like I'm criticizing the stereo in his DeLorean, which I am not. 1.21 gigawatts takes us into the rock and roll time stream once again for I Want to Go Back, where we look back at the history of rock and roll. But first, I have to take care of some business. Each and every week, first thing I've got to let you know about is your options, your choices. You're listening to us somewhere, but you have options and you have choices. And those choices and options include Spotify, Pocket Casts, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Amazon Music, CastBox, and Audible. And don't forget to check out the Facebook page, kids. Always got to check out the Facebook page every weekend, right around the time this episode will drop. You might as well jump in on the Weekend Rock Project. Since the kids are going back to school, kind of, sort of, tying that in for 2 weeks. This week, give us your favorite, your best rock songs that feature the word boy or boys in the title. Plenty to choose from, but next week should be even more fertile ground because then it's girl and girls, and you know there are a lot of songs out there to choose from. You guys better know, with my rock and roll brain, that I am taking a certain song from a certain 80s hair metal band that will get me triple points next week, is all I'm going to say. Then, of course, Sunday, New Music Sunday, Sunday, where I will post the best possible video, the best possible new song for you off of YouTube. Might be a fully produced video, might only be a lyric video or a visualizer, as those kids in Hollywood call it. But I will always try to give you the best in new music. And the discouraging thing is, read an article recently about the guitarist for Warrant. Now, Warrant, unfortunately, not the same. Tying this into the unfortunate death of Jack Russell earlier in the podcast, when Janie Lane died, Warrant just has never been the same. I have seen them without Janie Lane. Didn't get to see the original lineup. I regret that, but I have seen them with the new, and they do their best. It's like Foreigner. You see Foreigner now, there's not an original member left, but you know Kelly Hansen, Jeff Pilson, those guys are working their butts off to give you the best show possible. So that's how I look at Warrant now. Even though they still have original members left, they don't have the front man. They don't have Janie Lane, so it's not the same. But their guitarist recently came out talking about how discouraging and depressing it is that the fans just don't seem to care about new music. And I just want to say to him, then you need to start listening to the Fortress of Rock, because that's all we're trying to do here, is push new music. That's what our entire breakdown segment is about new music. So check out New Music Sunday on our Facebook page. And that includes you, Warrant guitarist, guy, dude. Sorry, I don't have his name in front of him. Don't disparage me for that. Because my rock and roll brain is overflowing. It is so full, I cannot remember the name of the guitarist for Warrant. And there's a lot of stuff that I need help with. And so I need help with News of the World, and I need help here with I Want to Go Back. And I have three main sources for that help each and every Friday night. UltimateClassicRock.com, ThisDayInMusic.com, and the Van Halen NewsDesk.com. All right, so let's move on to birthdays here. I have been touting August the 16th as a very, very important day, one of the most important days in rock history. Once I get through birthdays and get to anniversaries, you will start to understand a little bit better the significance of August the 16th. But the birthdays should not be dismissed. Born on this day, August the 16th, 1964, Matt Lukin, bass player for Mudhoney. Mudhoney, of course, very underrated, one of the most influential early bands of the grunge era. Then, of course, born on this day, August the 16th, 1958, Madonna Louise Ciccone. I think I got that right. I know she's Italian. Otherwise known simply as Madonna. Yes, born on this day in 1958. And we're not done talking about Madonna yet. We'll have some more news and history on her coming up in a few minutes. And then I always talk about bands, performers, vastly underrated that should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in my humble opinion. Collective Soul, Living Colour, Billy Squier, and In Excess. Born on this day, August the 16th, 1957. Tim Ferriss, guitar player for, yes, In Excess. Michael Hutchence, charismatic, fantastic lead singer, frontman for In Excess. Unfortunately, took the Chris Cornell way out. But they need to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Because, oh my God, we've got to put Sheryl Crow in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before In Excess. Tell me how that makes any sense whatsoever. All right, we're sticking with the rock and roll vibe. A band that was recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Born on this day, August the 16th, 1953. James J.T. Taylor, vocalist for Kool and the Gang. You know him, you love him. Celebration, all those great, great songs from Kool and the Gang, late 70s, early 80s. And yes, I admit, I tell the story on occasion, I admit I did not have a lot of love for the opening acts for Van Halen on their final few tours. Now, I love Kenny Wayne Shepherd. He was the opening act on the very last Van Halen tour. But before that, very, very spotty selections, even going all the way back to when Eddie Van Halen forced Private Life on us. If you remember Private Life, a band that he produced, their debut album. But I have seen Van Halen enough where I saw Alice in Chains. Yes, you would think that was great, but it wasn't. They were coming off their debut album, Facelift. Wasn't the best show in the world. They had one of Bob Marley's kids as an opening act one time, and then of course they had Kool and the Gang. And I admit I showed a lot of disrespect to Kool and the Gang when I went to see them open for Van Halen. I was in the concourse with my friend, drinking adult beverages, watching basketball. So, my bad. One of my few rock and roll faux pas. Again, born on this day in 1953, James J.T. Taylor, lead singer for Kool and the Gang. And then born on this day, August the 16th, 1948, Barry Hay. Barry Hay, vocalist for Golden Earring, who of course had two mammoth, monumental hits, spaced out years and years apart. Radar Love and, of course, Twilight Zone. Then, born on this day, August the 16th, 1945, Gary Loizo, vocalist for The American Breed. The American Breed, of course, most well known for their big hit song, Bend Me, Shape Me. And then finally in birthdays, born on this day, August the 16th, 1942, Robert Squirrel Lester of the Chi-Lites. Two big hits for them, Have You Seen Her and Oh Girl. And those of you like me who grew up in the 80s will remember Oh Girl, not by the Chi-Lites, but by Paul Young. Now we move on to anniversaries, and this is where we're going to spend some time breaking down a lot of significant stuff in rock and roll history. Last time I'll mention this. Sorry again about the varying audio quality. We've got it figured out, I think. I do think we've got it figured out. So from now on, here on out, the Fortress of Rock should be even audio quality going forward. I don't know how much I should blame Riverside, our new recording platform, for this, but they don't seem to like my very expensive microphone. So it looks like I'm better off recording with the internal mic on my Chromebook. Tell me how that makes any sense. Just like Sheryl Crow being in the Rock Hall of Fame ahead of INXS. Anyway, I have digressed yet again. Anniversaries for August the 16th. August the 16th, 2023. If you were listening 1 year ago, you know we covered this in News of the World. Jerry Moss passed away. Jerry Moss, co-founder with Herb Alpert of A&M Records. We talked about Madonna being born on this day. Well, we lost another great female singer on this day. One was born, one died. August the 16th, 2018, the great Aretha Franklin passed away on this day in 2018. And we're back to Madonna again. On this day, August the 16th, 1986, Madonna had not only the number one U.S. single with Papa Don't Preach, but she also had the number one U.S. album with True Blue. Very significant anniversary here for all of you 80s hair metal fans like me. Big, big, big one. August the 16th, 1986. Def Leppard's Rick Allen, drummer, made his first live appearance at Castle Donington with the band without his arm. Of course, he lost an arm in a terrible traffic accident. And the amazing comeback, the story behind what he's had to do and how he's had to relearn how to play the drums for a band that went through so much trauma and tragedy over the last 20 years, I would say. The last really negative thing I remember them going through is Vivian Campbell's cancer battle. But they weather the storm. They get through it all, and they emerge stronger than ever. And I think right now, here on the back end of all of this, it's paying dividends. Now finally they are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, ungodly successful, out there on the road right now with Journey. Kudos to Def Leppard. Kudos to Rick Allen. Again, this had to be a ridiculously scary moment for him, going on stage for the first time without his arm with Def Leppard. How about some love? It didn't last forever, didn't last very long, but on this day, August the 16th, 1983, Paul Simon marries Princess Leia. Yes, Paul Simon married Carrie Fisher, the actress. Didn't last long, like I said, because we all know he has been happily, blissfully married to Edie Brickell for years and years and decades. Sometimes second time is a charm, third time lucky, whatever you want to say about it. I believe it to a point. Technically, I would quote the Queensryche song, I Don't Believe in Love, but for those of you who do, don't give up. The second, the third, the fourth, the 10th. Well, if you're on your 10th, you're probably on one of those Real Housewives shows. But another digression, I'm sorry. One of the greatest songs of all time, honored on this day, August the 16th, 1979. My Sharona, awarded a gold record for 1 million units sold. On this day again in 1979. You guys know I am a huge fan of the Knack, and I think My Sharona, one of the greatest songs ever recorded. Now, if you haven't figured out by now, we've had some pretty significant moments here between birthdays and anniversaries. We're not even close to being done with anniversaries yet. But here we get to the point where you will understand why August the 16th is extremely, extremely significant. Beyond all the things that I have already told you about and all the things yet to come. August the 16th, 1977 is the day Elvis Presley died. We won't go into detail. We talked about Living Color earlier, of course. They have their song Elvis is Dead. And they go into the details about Elvis dying on his quote-unquote throne. But we lost the king of rock and roll on this day in 1977. If that wasn't enough, and we'll still talk more about Elvis in a few minutes, on this day, August the 16th, 1975, Peter Gabriel left Genesis. It took the band a while to figure out, after auditioning a bunch of potential new lead singers, that they had the guy they wanted, needed all along in drummer Phil Collins. But it took them a while to figure that out. Then, of course, Peter Gabriel moves on to a very, very successful solo career. Now, of course, another big part of this day in rock history, beyond the fact that we lost Elvis Presley and Aretha Franklin, August the 16th, 1969 was day 2 of Woodstock. Now, we're not going to go into all the gory details of Woodstock. We all know, arguably the most important rock and roll festival of all time. I might opt for the US Festival. Just me. Big Triumph fan. Van Halen, of course, I believe was there as well. And this is why. One little highlight I want to share with you to go along with this being day 2 of Woodstock back in 1969. On this day, I love Pete Townshend for this. I love him. I love him. Even if he did it in ignorance, as he claims he did, I still love him, love him, love him for this. Pete Townshend, during the Who's set at Woodstock, knocked hippie leader Abbie Hoffman off the stage when Hoffman tried to jump on during the Who's set and make some kind of ridiculous political point. Number one, that should be a lesson. Don't mess with the Who. How dare you interfere with the Who? Especially if you're a stupid, ignorant hippie. And of course, like I said, Pete Townshend tried to be diplomatic afterwards, saying, I didn't know it was Abbie Hoffman. It's okay, Pete. Here on the Fortress of Rock, for that and that alone, I mean, obviously, for all the other stuff you've done, but that and that alone would be enough to put you in the Fortress of Rock Hall of Fame. And we're not even close to being done yet. August the 16th, 1968, the Jackson Five make their official debut with Diana Ross and the Supremes at the Great Western Forum in Los Angeles. I'm telling you, kids, August the 16th, a magic day. Some good, some bad, but a magic day, an important day in rock and roll history. Arguably one of the most important ever. And we're still not done yet. August the 16th, 1962. This was the day that Pete Best was fired from the Beatles. Sarcastically referred to at times as the fifth Beatle. But he was given the door, given the boot, shown the door, sorry. And of course, eventually they would bring in Ringo Starr to take over on drums. Same day, August the 16th, 1962, little Stevie Wonder, 12 years old. 12 years old, little Stevie Wonder releases his very first single. And as they say, the rest is history. And then finally, to wrap up this monumental day in rock and roll history, more Elvis for you. On this day, August the 16th, 1958, Elvis the King of rock and roll, Presley, was assigned to the 3rd Armored Division in West Germany, of course, after he had been pulled into the military. And I've always admired him for that. The fact that he didn't try to duck and dodge his military obligations. I'm sure he was protected. I'm sure he got very light duty wherever he went. But still, I understand the other side as well. I understand protesting the war. And I'm not a big fan of people dictating, you have to do this. But all that being said, you still have to admire Elvis Presley for reporting for duty, as they say. And again, on this day in 1958, he was assigned to the 3rd Armored Division in West Germany. Elvis the King Presley. So you be the judge. You can drop a comment on our Spotify page. You can drop a comment on the Facebook page as well. Let me know Is this the most significant day in rock and roll history? Quick recap, just to back me up here. I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't. We have the birthday of Madonna. We have the death of Aretha Franklin. We have Elvis Presley dying. We have Peter Gabriel leaving Genesis. We have Woodstock going on. We have the debut of the Jackson 5. We have the day when Pete Best was booted out of the Beatles. The first song ever released from Stevie Wonder. Among many other significant moments on this day. Again, you guys dictate it. You tell me. I do this for you. You tell me if this day is not the most significant day in rock and roll history. And if it's not, you tell me which one is. But that is going to do it after a long sojourn through the rock and roll time stream. There is sweat on the brow of Doc Brown. He's looking tired. He needs to recharge his batteries. Not only his batteries, but the batteries, the engine for the rock and roll DeLorean. So we got to get this puppy back to the Fortress of Rock. We will pull up the moat, the drawbridge over the moat. Sorry, it has been a long, bizarre, weird night recording this podcast. We will pull up the drawbridge over the moat once we get the DeLorean back into the garage at the Fortress. Start to shut things down, turn the lights off, but we are not quite done yet. We have to wrap it up. One last time, one last note here. You'll notice a little bit probably of audio difference from segment to segment here on August the 16th. I promise we've got it ironed out. Here on out, we will have a smooth, consistent audio experience for you on the podcast here on the Fortress of Rock. No thanks to Riverside not liking my microphone. But all right, we're back home. We're back at the Fortress. Let's move on to wrap it up. All right, so we have come to the end of our road. Our roughly 90 minutes of rock and roll heaven. Each and every Friday night, the Fortress of Rock. It's time to wrap it up. Our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds. Episode 157 here on August the 16th, 2024. Again, a little bit of a somber feel to this episode. A little bit of a pall cast over it because of the deaths of Greg Kihn and Jack Russell. But we've done our best to uplift you and give you positivity, especially talking about Living Color. And of course, you just went through arguably, possibly, the most impactful day in rock history, August the 16th. A lot to digest there as we just finished up. I want to go back, but now, wrap it up. We'll discuss what's coming in the future. We've looked at the present. We've looked at the past. Now let's look at the future. Next week, episode 158, dropping Friday night, August the 23rd. The farewell tour for Lynch Mob, featuring George Lynch, classic guitarist from Dokken. I'll have my review of Lynch Mob live next week. Then in 2 weeks, been talking about it. Ended segment 1 this week, praising the new Jack White album, No Name. Full review will be coming on August the 30th, 2024, episode 159 of The Fortress. Then we get back into the concert scene in 3 weeks with my most anticipated show of 2024. And let me tell you, this year has had a wild, crazy vibe to it. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but the last two shows I have seen, between Collective Soul and Living Color, as ungodly good as they were, and I have always thought of them, both of those bands, in my top 10 of all time, in terms of my all-time favorite rock and roll performers. Then, of course, got Jackal coming up in November. We've got Night Ranger rescheduled in a way, not necessarily directly from the canceled concert that I've been discussing over the last couple weeks. But Night Ranger, of course, to me, one of the classiest acts in rock and roll. They must have known something. They must have known the shady business going on with the venue down in Plymouth, Indiana, pulling the rug out from under the fans the last second, canceling the show with them and Jackal with 4 days' notice. So Night Ranger has now announced they are going to be playing Elkhart, Indiana in December. I will have a review of that for you. That is breaking news for you here on the Fortress of Rock. But these concerts with these bands that I absolutely love and I have seen multiple times, and they never let me down. And then you get Sammy Hagar. In 3 weeks, Sammy Hagar with opening act. Of course, I love Loverboy as well. But Sammy Hagar on his Best of All Worlds tour, his tribute to Van Halen and the late great Eddie Van Halen. My review of that, you do not want to miss this, kids. Episode 160 on September the 6th, 2024. I will actually be seeing them August the 30th, so that previous episode featuring my review of No Name will be recorded a little bit earlier. But adjustments must be made for rock and roll greatness. And then in 4 weeks, what I've got penciled in for 4 weeks from now, the new Smashing Pumpkins album, Agori Mori Me, out on digital right now. Physical release coming later on in 2024. But we'll review that album, the new one from Smashing Pumpkins, on episode 161, September the 13th, 2024. Now, in terms of songs, a lot of stuff I've mentioned over the past week or two that we're going to get to here very soon. We'll throw a lot of this stuff in with Lynch Mob next week. The Offspring, second single from their upcoming album Supercharged, is Light It Up. Bryan Adams, his brand new record label, Bad Records, first release, Rock and Roll Hell, of course, a song he originally wrote for Kiss. David Lee Roth with another cover song. This time around, it is Baby Driver, old song from Simon and Garfunkel. Just mentioned Living Color again. The MC5, brand new album coming out again sometime a little bit later in 2024. Song is out right now featuring Living Color's Vernon Reid on guitar, Can't Be Found. And then the Cold Stares, one of those smaller bands that I really and truly love, like Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, another. I'm telling you, this concert year is really starting to freak me out. It feels almost like a farewell tour for me. All of my favorite artists and my favorite bands, and I'm getting to see them. Hopefully not for the final time. And the thing is, so far with, again, Collective Soul and Living Color, knocking it out of the park. Wow. I just cannot wait for the rest of the concert season throughout 2024 to commence. But the Cold Stares, one of those smaller bands that I really, really like and would love for you guys to try out. Their new song, Mortality Blues, is also on the slate here for the Fortress of Rock coming up in the next few weeks. One new addition to the list in terms of songs. Going to see live Stone Temple Pilots and Soul Asylum in the middle of September. We're probably looking at that review 5 or 6 weeks out. Brand new song from live. Haven't really heard much from them. Ed Kowalczyk, of course, I believe is the only remaining member from the original, the classic lineup of live. This song features one of the DeLeo brothers from Stone Temple Pilots, Lady Bang, subtitled She Got Me Rollin'. So we'll have that coming up for you in the next few weeks as well, here on the Fortress of Rock. Alright, so we've covered specifically what albums, what concert reviews are coming up over the next month. We've covered what songs we're going to fit in there over the next month. That leaves our tribute to the Billboard charts. And as you guys know, at this point, every week in the Fortress of Rock, I love to praise the old Billboard charts from the 70s and the 80s, where it actually made sense, unlike this world we live in nowadays. I don't think the Billboard charts are worth the paper they're printed on, if they still actually print a physical magazine anymore. Or they're not worth the payroll that they're shelling out for the programmer who has to type all that stuff in every week. How about that? How about that for some new school talk for you from the Maestro? Well, as you probably could expect, in some ways I'm a very complicated person, but in other ways it's not too hard to figure me out. Number one album this week, Fortress of Rock charts, is Jack White's No Name. Second week in a row. I imagine this could be a fairly long stay at the top of the charts here on the Fortress of Rock for Jack White. So again, second week in a row, No Name is your number one album. Now last week we had some other songs, despite the fact that No Name was the number one album. This week, now it's finally time. Some of these fantastic songs from No Name need to be acknowledged, recognized at the top of our song chart here on the Fortress of Rock. So, as I always do, I cheat and I give you 2 songs every week. Very rare exceptions to that. Old Scratch Blues and Tonight Was a Long Time Ago, both by Jack White, both off of No Name. Those are your top songs of the week here on the Fortress of Rock, Friday night, August the 16th, 2024. Once again, top songs, Old Scratch Blues and Tonight, subtitled Was a Long Time Ago. Yes, again, both off of No Name by Jack White. So there you go, kids. That is the Fortress of Rock for August the 16th, 2024, episode 157 is over, done, and finished. But you know, in 7 days, I'll be right back here again, doing it all for you, talking about concerts, talking about music news, and talking about the history of rock and roll. But until then, summer is winding down. I know it's depressing. Go out and check out a couple shows before the weather turns bad, unless you're fortunate enough to live in California or Florida or Texas, where you can go see these shows year-round. Lucky, lucky, lucky people. Everything shuts down up here in the upper Midwest basically from November all the way through mid-April. So, gonna cram in, like I said, as many shows as I can here. Cannot wait to get the rest of my concert schedule going for 2024, which now will carry all the way through until early December with Night Ranger at the Lerner Theater in Elkhart, Indiana. Breaking news on the Fortress of Rock, replacing the rip-off show where it was supposed to be them and Jackal and Firehouse and Enough's Enough in Plymouth, Indiana, and they will not refund the money, even though the show was supposed to have taken place August the 2nd. I am going to make the Plymouth Speedway's life a living hell until I get my money back. Trust me, I've got people on my side that I bought tickets for who are raining down calls and emails on them as well. I've already contacted local media. Not that hard. You press a couple buttons, you release the money, you give it back to the people who gave you the concert ticket cash 4 months ago. Plymouth Speedway, and they have a history of doing this. Consider this your Consumer Reports portion of the podcast. Buyer beware, when you guys go out there to see these shows, make sure you are buying tickets from a reputable source or a reputable venue. Also, I don't want to disparage the ticketing platform that was used because I've dealt with them in the past and they have a great track record. But the Plymouth Speedway, garbage. Crooks. And I won't let up on this, kids, until I get the refund from me, my friends, and everybody else out there who simply wanted to see a great rock and roll show. So you got 7 days before you'll probably hear me complain about that some more. Or hopefully good news, maybe I'll get my money back. But until then, enjoy what's left of the summer. Spend some time with your family, your friends. Labor Day's coming up, of course. Barbecues to kind of usher out the summer and get us into the fall. School is starting already for a lot of kids, a lot of college students. That's depressing because that's really the sign that summer's coming to an end. But love the one you're with. Do not take them for granted unless they really, really drive you crazy. Then get the heck out as soon as you can. Beat feet. I'm the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are. We will talk to you again in 1 week here on the Fortress of Rock. Peace out.